Russia's war against Ukraine will end within the next 6 months. This prediction was made by US Vice President JD Vance on NBC News. He added that he does not approve of the Russian strike on the American enterprise in Mukachevo, just as he disapproves of many other actions taken by the Russian Federation. Vance emphasized the role of US President Donald Trump's administration in efforts to stop the war.
What truly excites me right now is that we currently have a president who is deeply engaged in active diplomacy to diligently try to stop the ongoing killing and whatever the ultimate outcome, whether the war ends in 3 months or perhaps 6 months, I sincerely hope it won't take any longer than that.
Vance added that the final determination of Ukraine's territorial borders will be up to the Ukrainians themselves.
Ultimately, it will be up to the Ukrainians themselves to decide where the territorial borders of their country will lie.
The US Vice President stated that for the first time in 3.5 years of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, the Russians have allegedly made significant concessions.
I'm not saying the Russians have conceded on everything, but they have conceded in recognizing Ukraine's territorial integrity after the war.
JD Vance once again confirmed that American troops will not be present in Ukraine. However, Washington will play an active role in providing security guarantees.
The president has applied aggressive economic pressure. For example, secondary tariffs against India to make it harder for Russians to profit from their oil-based economy. He tried to make it clear that Russia could be invited back into the global economy if they stop the killings, but they will remain isolated if they do not stop.
He also added that the US is putting pressure on Russia to bring them to the negotiating table. In Vance's opinion, in the end, there will either be success or a stalemate. If there is a stalemate, then the negotiation process will begin with the application of pressure. This is active diplomacy that should bring an end to the Russian Federation's war against Ukraine.
In the Kuril district of Russia's Sakhalin region, the sale of 92-octane gasoline has been suspended, reported the head of the Kuril district, Konstantin Istomin. The remaining gasoline is needed for special vehicles, he explained. Previously, the Kuril Islands introduced a restriction on gasoline sales to no more than 10 liters per person. Earlier reports from Primorsky Krai mentioned kilometer-long lines at gas stations, and in Zabaikalsky Krai, gasoline began to be sold with ration coupons. Fuel shortages have also occurred in the temporarily occupied Crimea. Earlier, Kommersant reported that due to Ukrainian attacks on oil refineries, the aggressor country Russia found itself on the brink of a gasoline crisis. And not just gasoline. In 67 regions of Russia, there is a budget shortfall. For example, in the Irkutsk region, the budget deficit amounted to 24.5%. In the Kemerovo region, the situation is even worse. The deficit is 34%. Similar problems exist in the Arkhangelsk and Murmansk regions, as well as in the Komi Republic. Experts believe that by the end of the year, the situation will worsen because in December, regions usually spend large amounts of money on paying for government contracts.
Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev stated that after signing the peace agreement with Armenia, the authorities continue to monitor sources of new threats and are building up military strength to ensure security. The statement was made against the backdrop of escalating tensions between Baku and Moscow, as well as threats from Russian propagandists to launch a new so-called special military operation in the South Caucasus.
We must be ready for war at any moment because the way things are going in the world, it is impossible to predict what will happen tomorrow. The guarantee of our security is ourselves, the state, the people, and our armed forces. Therefore, anyone who decides to strike Azerbaijan will regret it.
Aliyev noted that the Republic has already strengthened its army on the Caspian Sea and in other directions, as well as increased the number of special forces and is acquiring modern weaponry.
We do not advise anyone to even think about hostile actions against us. We have strong enough allies, and our position in international organizations is always recognized as fair. Unlike some other countries, we have not seized any foreign territory, have not carried out ethnic cleansing, and have not destroyed a single city or village.
Aliyev emphasized that Azerbaijan does not want war, stands for peace, but must remain vigilant. Earlier, the Russian authorities, through propagandists, threatened Azerbaijan with a special military operation that could begin after the war in Ukraine ends. Russian propaganda has sharply escalated its belligerent rhetoric toward Azerbaijan amid reports that the Republic may lift its moratorium on supplying weapons to Ukraine. These threats emerged after Russia struck facilities belonging to the state oil and gas company Sokar in the Odessa region. Z-bloggers also threatened Azerbaijan with war because of Aliyev's advice to Ukraine to never surrender and never agree to occupation. In a letter to Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelenskyy on Independence Day, the president of Azerbaijan stated that Ukraine and Azerbaijan, in accordance with the norms and principles of international law, demonstrate mutual support and solidarity on issues of territorial integrity and sovereignty. Azerbaijan will continue to provide the Ukrainian people with the necessary humanitarian aid and support.
Russia is preparing to test the Burevestnik nuclear missile. At the Rogachevo military airbase on Novaya Zemlya, An-72, An-26 and Il-76 transport planes, 2 Su-35S fighter jets, and 8 helicopters have appeared, according to the Telegram channel Strategic Control. They were transporting personnel and equipment to the Pankovo and Severny test ranges. In addition, 9 ships were concentrated in the area around the island. The Burevestnik tests may also have been discussed during Vladimir Putin's visit to Sarov, according to an anonymous Telegram channel cited by the newspaper Kommersant. A long-range airborne early warning and control aircraft, the A-50U, also arrived at Rogachevo, Strategic Control reported. These aircraft have rarely appeared in the Arctic since the start of the war in Ukraine. The area west of Novaya Zemlya is closed to civilian aviation until August 25th. In addition, the Coastal Administration of the Russian Arctic region has warned ships of danger when approaching the northeastern part of the Barents Sea, the publication writes. The Barents Observer reported on the possible preparations for Burevestnik tests in early August, and later Reuters also wrote about possible preparations for Burevestnik tests. Burevestnik is a missile with a nuclear power unit. Russia has already conducted tests of it on Novaya Zemlya in 2019. At that time, they apparently caused radiation exposure to several people. 2 died and 6 were injured. In 2024, Norwegian intelligence warned in its report that Russia would likely continue weapons testing on Novaya Zemlya.
An explosion occurred at the Central Children's Store in Moscow. The store is located next to the FSB headquarters. According to reports, a gas cylinder for balloons allegedly exploded in the store. There are reports of 1 person killed and 3 injured. According to VCHK-OGPU, a 55-year-old FSB officer, Alexei Titov, was seriously injured in the explosion. According to the channel, his bag with his service ID inside was found at the scene of the explosion. Titov's wife told VHK-OGPU that her husband is in the hospital. The Telegram channel, citing the woman, also reports that Titov held a managerial position in the FSB. Earlier, in the city of Balashika in the Moscow region, a car exploded near which the deputy head of the main operations directorate of the General Staff of the Russian Federation, Yaroslav Moskalik, was passing at the time. He died at the scene. Also in Bryansk, Russia, Russian engineer Yevgeny Rytnikov, who was involved in modernizing the occupiers' electronic warfare systems, was killed in an explosion. Meanwhile, Pulkovo airport did not receive or send any planes for almost a day due to a drone attack. During this time, 90 flights were cancelled at the St. Petersburg airport and about 80 flights were delayed by more than 2 hours. Another 42 planes were diverted to alternate airfields. Similar restrictions due to drone attacks were also imposed in other cities. Delays and flight cancellations occurred at Sheremetyevo, as well as at the airports of Penza, Saratov, Nizhny Novgorod, Kirov, Izhevsk, Kaluga, and others. On August 24th, unidentified drones once again attacked Russia. Explosions thundered in the port settlement of Usluga. Due to the work of air defense, the terminal of the gas company Novatek caught fire.
I don't know, it's burning. Novatek, will it launch us or not? The old shift hasn't been released yet, and they definitely won't let us in. That's why I'm having a blast today.
In Syzran, Russia, things were also unsettled. Eyewitnesses reported hearing more than 20 explosions in the city. The Syzran oil refinery, which is one of the key enterprises of the Russian Federation in the war against Ukraine, was under attack. About 1,000 Russian tourists were stranded in China due to a powerful typhoon. Typhoon Kajiki swept across the resort island of Hainan over the weekend. In several cities, trees were knocked down, some uprooted, and cars were also damaged. At the same time, some tourists were caught by the storm not in their hotels. Vacationers told the Telegram channel Shot that they had to take shelter from the typhoon in a shopping mall where they spent several hours. Others complained that the buildings they were in were shaking quite a lot. Because of this, some people experienced panic attacks. Amid the typhoon, flights to several Russian cities have been cancelled. Earlier, due to frequent disruptions at Russian airports, Russians flying in from Turkey had to wait days for their luggage. As reported by the Telegram channel Baza, Turkish Airlines passengers stood in hours-long lines for their luggage and sometimes received it damaged. It was noted that the airline deliberately accumulates luggage and sends it to Russia only once every few days due to the increased number of flight cancellations and delays. Turkish Airlines doesn't even take all passengers on some flights in order to free up weight for extra fuel, which might be needed for the return flight to Turkey in case of another aviation collapse. The latest weaponry is being brought to Beijing. According to Bloomberg, during the parade on September 3rd, China will showcase missiles capable of reaching US territory. Based on analysis of satellite images, Beijing has prepared to display anti-ship missiles, combat drones, and nuclear-capable ballistic missiles. According to the publication, China is developing hypersonic missiles at maximum speed. These missiles are so fast and maneuverable that modern defense systems cannot intercept them in time. This is one of the main areas of competition between the US, China, and Russia. Meanwhile, several media outlets report that Putin will make a 4-day visit to the People's Republic of China. There, he will participate in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit. In June, Yuri Ushakov, an aide to the Russian dictator, reported that Putin's trip to China would last from August 31 to September 3rd. US President Donald Trump spoke about his plans to meet with the leader of China. He stated that he had recently spoken with Xi Jinping and added that he is considering a trip to China as part of negotiations on trade terms between the two countries.
At some point in the near future, probably this year or very soon after, we will definitely go to the country of China.
Trump also stated that the US and China will have excellent relations, although he warned that if he wanted to, he could destroy China by playing the incredible cards at his disposal. In April of this year, Donald Trump announced an increase in tariffs on Chinese goods to 145%, which led to retaliatory measures from Beijing. Thus, China raised tariffs on American goods from 34% to 125%. This led to a sharp decline in production in China and a drop in markets due to decreased demand. As a result, the US and China reached an agreement on a 90-day pause on some of the mutual tariffs, which began on May 14, 2025. This temporary suspension and reduction of tariffs is an attempt to ease the trade war and reduce the trade balance deficit between the two countries. Also, according to the latest information, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Kuokun denied reports that China is ready to send a peacekeeping contingent to Ukraine under a UN mandate.
Flamingo and Long Neptune are a tandem of Ukrainian missiles that pose a real threat to both the near and deep rear of the aggressor country Russia. This was reported by military expert Alexander Kovalenko. Thus, in August, Ukraine presented 2 subsonic cruise missiles at once. First, the Flamingo missile was showcased, and literally right before Independence Day, a modified and improved version of the R-360 Long Neptune was presented. These are significant trump cards in the dispute with Russia, which continues to issue ultimatums. As of today, the Flamingo is, by its characteristics, the best subsonic cruise missile in the world. It surpasses not only the Russian Kh-101, Kh-55 Kaliber, and Iskander-K missiles, but also the American Tomahawk. It is superior in terms of target engagement range, warhead mass, and also in several other parameters that none of the critics have mentioned. For example, its flight range is 3,000 kilometers, its maximum speed is 950 kilometers per hour, and its cruising speed is between 850 and 900 kilometers per hour. The warhead weighs between 1,000 and 1,150 kilograms. The guidance system is combined, including satellite, electronic warfare resistant, and inertial systems. The thing is, the Flamingo is essentially a mobilization missile. It is produced quickly in large quantities and is relatively inexpensive. Exactly what is needed in the context of a dynamic and extremely aggressive war of attrition. The second undeniable advantage of the Flamingo is its land-based launch platform. This is a surface-to-surface missile, which makes it difficult to detect an upcoming launch and to track the missile once it has been fired. At the same time, the Long Neptune is a more versatile weapon, which in the future will be able to pose a threat to the enemy not only from land, but also from sea and air. This missile was originally designed to strike not only surface targets, but also land targets, which it demonstrated perfectly in 2023 when it destroyed the Russian S-400 complex at Cape Tarkankut. In recent days, Ukraine has struck 10 Russian oil refineries with drones, disabling about 17% of their capacity. That's more than 1 million barrels of processing per day, according to Reuters. According to the agency, Ukraine carried out a series of massive drone attacks on oil refineries in the Russian Federation, managing to reduce their capacity by almost a fifth within 30 days. Thus, Kyiv may improve its negotiating position in an attempt to end the war. It is noted that Kyiv struck both refineries and Moscow's export infrastructure, demonstrating to Washington its ability to resist. As a result of the attacks, there has been a gasoline shortage in Russia, particularly in the temporarily occupied Crimea, as well as in the south of the Russian Federation and the Far East, where lines have formed at gas stations and drivers are complaining about rising prices and a shortage of A95 gasoline.
I came to the gas station to fill up. They say they're out of gasoline. Now they're only giving it out with coupons. What do you mean with coupons? What's going on? Have we gone back to the Soviet Union?
Over the past few weeks, Ukraine has struck a number of refineries. The Volgograd Lukoil refinery, Ryazan Rosneft, and plants in the Rostov, Samara, Saratov, and Krasnodar regions have all come under attack. The Novoshakhtinsk refinery burnt for a week.
That's the situation we woke up to this morning. And all of this is because of the oil refinery.
Meanwhile, drones struck the Druzhba oil pipeline in the Bryansk region, as well as the export terminal and the Novatek fuel processing complex in Ust-Luga, Leningrad region. At the beginning of August, there was a raid on the Afipsky refinery in the Krasnodar region of Russia. OSINT believes that the UAVs hit the gas and gas condensate joint processing unit. Russia will face serious consequences if the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin does not agree to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, said US President Donald Trump.
The consequences could be very serious because the war in Ukraine must end.
However, the American president did not specify what those consequences might be. Trump also stated that the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin does not want to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy because he doesn't like him.
Because he doesn't like him, he doesn't care for him. There are people I don't like. I don't like meeting with them.
Trump added that Zelenskyy doesn't like Putin either. As is known, after the summit in Washington, US President Donald Trump suggested that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Russian dictator Vladimir Putin hold a bilateral meeting. According to media reports, the Kremlin proposed holding talks in Moscow, but Zelenskyy refused. The White House in turn considered Budapest as an alternative. However, there is no official confirmation of this yet. The president of Ukraine stated that a meeting with Putin should take place only on neutral territory in Europe, for example, in Austria or Switzerland. He also does not rule out the possibility of holding talks in Turkey. At the same time, the Russian Foreign Ministry reported that Putin is allegedly ready to meet with the Ukrainian president only if all issues requiring discussion at the highest level are thoroughly prepared. The Russian Federation also stated that Ukraine and Russia have not yet moved closer to holding a summit at the highest level. A meeting between Zelenskyy and Putin is only possible when both sides agree on the agenda. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian president is convinced that the Russians are doing everything to prevent the meeting from taking place. Meanwhile, Donald Trump stated that the United States is studying the experience of using drones in the war in Ukraine.
This is the biggest event in the history of military affairs. This is a completely new form of warfare. This is a drone war, something that has never existed before, and we are studying it. Pete Hegseth and everyone else. We are studying it, and we are studying it very closely. This is a completely new form of war, but it is a brutal war.
On August 21st, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy announced that Ukraine had prepared and proposed to the United States a drone agreement worth $50 billion for a period of 5 years. On July 16th, Zelenskyy reported that Trump had informed him of Washington's desire to purchase Ukrainian drones. During Donald Trump's trip to Scotland and his recent public appearances, attention was once again drawn to his right hand, which he constantly tries to conceal with makeup. The 79-year-old president is not hiding his bruises for the first time. According to the White House, they appeared due to the large number of handshakes and his use of aspirin. For example, in February 2025, during the visit of French President Emmanuel Macron to the White House, Trump was seen with a large hematoma on the back of his right hand. In July, during the FIFA Club World Cup final, his swollen ankles drew attention. And they were noticed again during a meeting with Vladimir Putin in Alaska on August 15th. On August 22nd in Washington, during a speech at the People's House exhibition, Trump tried to hide his hand by folding it with his left, but during his address in the Oval Office, the bright layer of makeup was still conspicuous. In July 2025, a medical report confirmed the US president has chronic venous insufficiency, a common condition among older people in which the veins are less effective at circulating blood. The president's doctor noted that the bruises are minor and typical for those who take aspirin as a preventive measure against cardiovascular diseases. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has repeatedly assured that Trump remains in excellent health and his dedication to his work is evident every day. As is well known, the press and the public closely monitor the appearance and any changes in the looks of famous figures. For example, at one point, a bruise was noticed on the back of Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom's hand. Queen Elizabeth II died at the age of 96 on September 8, 2022. The Queen's death certificate stated that she died of old age. Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that he met with the Queen a few days before her death and had known about her condition for over a year, naming the diagnosis as bone cancer.
Belgium has expressed its readiness to join a peacekeeping mission in Ukraine as soon as a decision on a ceasefire is made. This was stated by Belgian Foreign Minister Maxime Prévost during his visit to Odessa.
When a decision on a ceasefire is made, we are ready to participate in international forces with an international mandate. Then I will discuss this with the government and especially with my colleague, the Minister of Defense, to determine exactly what kind of military contribution we can make. But we are ready to join such peacekeeping forces when it becomes necessary.
The Belgian foreign minister also stated that the country will deliver F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine next month. Let us recall that the United Kingdom remains ready to consider the possibility of deploying troops to Ukraine in the event of a peace agreement with the aggressor, the Russian Federation. Earlier, Bloomberg reported that about 10 countries have expressed their willingness to send their troops to Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron stated that the British, French, Germans, Turks and others are ready to carry out operations not on the front lines, not provocatively, but operations to ensure security in the air, at sea and on land. US President Donald Trump and European leaders have agreed that the head of the US State Department, Marco Rubio, will lead a working group consisting of national security advisors and NATO representatives, which will develop security guarantees for Ukraine. At the same time, the US will not send its own troops to Ukraine, but is ready to provide air support to European countries that have expressed a desire to send their military personnel to Ukraine as a security guarantee. Donald Trump threatened Russia with an economic war and called Lavrov's statement about the illegitimacy of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy nonsense. He made these statements during a meeting with members of his cabinet. Responding to a question about whether Vladimir Putin has a deadline to agree to bilateral talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, Trump said,
"This won't be a world war, but an economic war, and an economic war, that would be bad. It would be bad for Russia and for Ukraine. I don't want that."
The US president stated that he is very serious about his intentions if he has to take such action, once again reminding that thousands of people die in war. The US president noted that he would seek a personal meeting between the leaders of Russia and Ukraine because he wants everything to come to an end. In response to a journalist's remark that Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Putin would not sign a peace agreement with Zelenskyy considering him illegitimate, Trump replied,
"It doesn't matter what they say. It's all nonsense. They're all just playing to the audience."
Trump also stated that the US would increase arms supplies to Washington's NATO allies, who are currently providing military assistance to Ukraine.
"We are no longer involved in funding Ukraine. We are involved in stopping the war, in ending the killing. NATO is funding the war. We are not funding anything."
US Presidential Special Envoy Stephen Witkoff stated at a cabinet meeting that the United States hopes the war in Ukraine will end by the end of 2025. According to him, the American side will organize meetings this week regarding the Ukrainian settlement. Witkoff said that Russia has put forward a peace proposal for discussion, which concerns the Donetsk region. Washington believes that the current stage of negotiations could be a step toward ending the war. A new earthquake with a magnitude of 6 has occurred in Russia. During the night of August 27, tremors were felt by residents of Makhachkala, Derbent, Kaspisk and Khasavyurt, as well as in Aktau, Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan. According to the European Mediterranean Seismological Center, the epicenter of the earthquake was in the Caspian Sea, 28 kilometers east of the city of Izberbash at a depth of 10 kilometers. In Dagestan, local residents went outside, fearing new tremors. The moment of the earthquake was caught during a football broadcast. The event was also captured by a surveillance camera installed in the southern part of the republic. According to the Regional Ministry of Emergency Situations, there were no casualties or destruction. Emergency services did not receive any calls with complaints from the public. Cracks began to appear in apartments after the earthquake in Dagestan.
Just so you understand, see over there, do you see it? A piece of concrete fell from there. This crack just appeared now. Over there and over there above the window.
The government of Dagestan has warned that during underground tremors it is necessary to stay away from windows and stoves and to beware of falling or toppling objects. This is already the second earthquake off the coast of Kamchatka in the past month. Let us recall, on July 30th, one of the most powerful earthquakes occurred on the peninsula. The natural disaster damaged a Russian military base for nuclear submarines capable of carrying nuclear weapons. In particular, it was affected by a tsunami, as evidenced by a high-resolution satellite image. The images show that during the tsunami, the pier of the naval base in the closed city of Vilyuchinsk was damaged. The tremors of the Earth's crust also awakened the volcanoes in Kamchatka. For the first time in 600 years, the Krasheninnikov volcano has begun to erupt. The president of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, gave an interview to the Al Arabiya TV channel where he spoke about the conflict with Russia, the Zangezur corridor, and relations with Armenia and Washington. According to Aliyev, the downing of a civilian aircraft by Russian forces and the reaction of Russian officials to the incident have caused great disappointment and dissatisfaction in Azerbaijan.
They struck the plane twice. Only the professionalism and courage of the pilots allowed the plane to land, and fortunately, it landed in Kazakhstan and not in Russia. It was damaged by a Russian air defense system. First of all, the plane should not have been shot down at all. However, it was a tragic mistake.
The president of Azerbaijan cited as an example an incident during the Second Karabakh War, when Azerbaijan accidentally shot down a Russian helicopter that had approached the country's border. According to Aliyev, Azerbaijan immediately paid compensation to the families of the deceased pilots and to the Ministry of Defense.
We have not seen anything like that from Russia. We expected that sooner or later the investigation would be completed. But then these unfounded attacks on Azerbaijanis in Russia began. 2 people were tortured and killed, and the subsequent official information stated that they had died of a heart attack.
Aliyev also emphasized that from the very first days of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Azerbaijan has supported and continues to support Ukraine's territorial integrity. Ilham Aliyev also noted that the document on peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan initialed in Washington is based on the Azerbaijani vision for resolving relations between the two countries. Aliyev emphasized that if Armenia withdraws from the document signed in Washington, it will seriously worsen relations between Armenia and the United States. Speaking about the Zangezur corridor, the president of Azerbaijan stated that it will become an important transportation link connecting continents.
Now that President Trump has given his name to the Zangezur corridor, I am confident that it will be implemented in the near future. We are now almost at the final stage of infrastructure development. The projects will be ready, possibly in 2 or 3 years.
Ilham Aliyev also emphasized that Azerbaijan can increase the volume of gas supplies to Syria.
An explosion occurred on the Ryazan-Moscow oil pipeline in Russia. This was reported by Union, citing sources in the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. The transportation of petroleum products to the Russian capital has been halted indefinitely. It is reported that on August 26th, a powerful explosion occurred in the Ryazan region on a main oil pipeline that supplies oil to Moscow. Intelligence sources note that after the explosion on the section of the main oil pipeline, a large fire broke out. Emergency vehicles, law enforcement agencies, and repair crews arrived at the scene. It is known that since 2018, the pipeline has been repurposed for the supply of automotive gasoline by the company Transneft, which supplies the army of the aggressor country. According to sources from the publication familiar with Ukrainian intelligence, representatives of Transneft are currently calculating the losses. Ukrainian Armed Forces serviceman and political scientist Kirilo Sazonov commented on the pipeline explosion on his YouTube channel.
The fact is that fuel shortages in Russia are already happening in Crimea, in Primorsky Krai, in Vladivostok. That's considered normal. But when it comes to Moscow, the pain of Muscovites is always a bit more genuine.
Sazonov notes that solving the gasoline shortage problem will be difficult, since the railway network of the aggressor country is overloaded. Moreover, alternative supply routes are not safe.
The paralysis of Russia without gasoline is very, very impressive. And the fact that Moscow will feel it firsthand, Moscow specifically, adds a special piquancy to this situation.
It should be noted that after drone strikes on the oil refineries of the aggressor country, a fuel collapse is intensifying in Russia. For example, the sale of AI-92 gasoline has been suspended for residents of the Kuril district. And since August 20th, restrictions on gasoline sales have been in effect in the Kurils, no more than 10 liters per person. Residents of Primory, Zabaikalsky Krai, as well as the temporarily occupied Ukrainian Crimea, are also experiencing fuel shortages. Flooding in Sakhalin. Due to heavy rains, rivers on the island have overflowed their banks. Streets and houses are flooded, roads and bridges have been washed out. Local residents are showing the aftermath of the disaster. For example, bus passengers say they almost drowned because the roads were washed away.
We were on this bus and it just drove into a ditch. We got out here. That's it. Everything is getting flooded here. The greenhouse started floating away.
According to the Telegram channel Baza, the Nevelsky district of Sakhalin was hit the hardest by the flooding. Due to the rain-induced flood, a state of emergency has been declared there. In the Nevelsky district, the Kazachka River has overflowed its banks and is flowing through the streets. In the village of Kolkoznaya, about 70 houses are at risk of being completely flooded. In addition, the water swept away greenhouses and outbuildings and also destroyed a bridge. It is reported that rescuers have evacuated 37 people. Furthermore, a mud flow occurred near the village of Selezneva, as a result of which the Nevelsk-Gornozavodsk road is blocked. According to the Telegram channel Shot, the neighboring island of Maniran, which is a popular tourist destination near Sakhalin, has also been flooded. It is noted that due to the flooding, there is no electricity or water on the island and mud flows have destroyed several areas. Maniran is closed to tourists until September 7. According to local authorities, it is dangerous to stay there. Due to the bad weather, the ferry crossing that connects Sakhalin with the mainland of Russia is also being closed. It should be noted that various regions of Russia often suffer from natural disasters. For example, on the night of August 27th, an earthquake occurred in Dagestan. Tremors with a magnitude of 6 were recorded in the Caspian Sea. The residents of Makhachkala felt the earthquake the most. Russia has reduced its maritime oil exports, according to news agencies citing Bloomberg. This happened due to Ukrainian strikes on Russian oil infrastructure and secondary US tariffs against India. It is noted that last week Russian oil shipments by sea fell to a minimum. According to the agency, from August 18 to 24, the aggressor country exported by sea 320,000 barrels less than the week before. During this period, Russia shipped 19 million barrels of oil by sea, while the previous week it was more than 21 million barrels. The reduction in supplies was influenced in particular by Ukrainian drone strikes on the Unecha linear production dispatching station, which supplied oil to the port of Ust-Luga. The publication notes that oil exports were also affected by a drop in purchases from India by more than 500,000 barrels per day. The reason for this is the secondary tariffs imposed by US President Donald Trump. On August 27th, new 50% tariffs came into effect, which Trump imposed on Indian goods, including due to the export of Russian oil. Overall, Russia's revenues from maritime oil exports fell by 9% over the week. Meanwhile, the fuel crisis in several Russian regions continues. According to the Telegram channel Kremlin Snuffbox, the real fuel situation in the south of the aggressor country is close to critical. It is noted that there are significant problems with gasoline in the Rostov region, as well as in the temporarily occupied Crimea. In the Krasnodar region, gasoline reserves at gas stations are rapidly dwindling.
On the night of August 28th, drones attacked oil facilities on the territory of the aggressor country Russia, the Kuibyshev oil refinery in Samara and the Afipsky oil refinery in Krasnodar Krai. Eyewitnesses captured the moment the Kuibyshev oil refinery was hit, which resulted in a large fire.
It exploded. It's burning.
Local authorities are not commenting on the strike at the Kuibyshev oil refinery. Several hours after the attack, the governor of the Samara region reported on the drone strike.
Air defense and emergency services are at work. Temporary restrictions have been imposed on arrivals and departures at Samara Airport. For the safety of citizens, restrictions have been placed on mobile internet usage.
As of this morning, the massive fire in Samara has not been extinguished. A huge cloud of black smoke hangs over the oil refinery. As a result of the drone attack, the Afipsky oil refinery in the Krasnodar region also caught fire. Videos of the massive fire are being posted online. The operational headquarters of the Krasnodar region confirmed the attack on the Afipsky oil refinery. It is reported that in the village of Afipsky, Seversky district, one of the oil refinery's units caught fire due to falling debris. In addition, near the village of Krinitsa in Gelendzhik, a forest fire broke out, covering an area of about 200 square meters. Soon after, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported the alleged destruction of 102 UAVs. Allegedly, 22 drones were shot down over the Black Sea, 21 over the territories of Rostov and Samara regions, 18 over Krasnodar Krai, and 11 over the temporarily occupied territory of Crimea. Meanwhile, on August 28th, Russia once again deliberately attacked Ukrainian civilian infrastructure and peaceful residents. Loud explosions thundered in Kyiv. In particular, impacts were recorded in the Darnitsky district of the capital. There, the entrance of a 5-story residential building was completely destroyed. As a result of the attack by the aggressor country, as of 10:30 a.m., 12 people are known to have died. As stated by the Minister of Internal Affairs, Ihor Klimenko, the Russians struck the 5-story building with a missile at around 3 o'clock in the morning. Rescue operations are ongoing at the site of the strike, with people still trapped under the rubble. In the Darnitsky district, Russian strikes also caused a fire in a multi-story building. Significant damage to residential infrastructure has also been recorded in other districts of Kyiv. Russia has responded to the remarks made by Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev regarding the invasion of Ukraine and the occupation of the country. State Duma Deputy Konstantin Zatulin stated that the Azerbaijani president's words, calling Putin's special operation, specifically the war of conquest in Ukraine, an invasion, are an attack against Russia. The deputy also reproached the president of Azerbaijan for not recognizing the results of the illegally held referendums by Russia in Crimea and the occupied territories, which the aggressor country incorporated into its constitution. According to the Russian deputy, until recently he did not voice this position so insistently because cooperation with Russia was beneficial to him. They say that now, since Aliyev has found another mediator in the form of the United States, he no longer needs Russia as a partner. The deputy threatened that Moscow is already drawing conclusions from the situation. Let us recall that the president of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, stated that the country was under occupation as part of the Soviet Union. He said this in an interview with Al Arabiya.
When the Russian Empire fell in 1917, the Azerbaijan Democratic Republic was proclaimed in Azerbaijan. It was the first democratic republic in the Muslim world, founded in May 1918. It lasted until April 1920, when the Russian army invaded and occupied Azerbaijan.
According to the Telegram channel Kremlin Snuffbox, Ilham Aliyev's recent statements have angered many influential people in Moscow. The idea of conducting a so-called special military operation in this country is being discussed more and more often, though for now, mostly in hushed tones, according to a source cited by the publication.
Aliyev is provoking, hiding behind Erdogan and trying to destabilize the Caucasus.
Supposedly, the government has hinted that border checkpoints with Azerbaijan could be closed for repairs as early as September. Most likely not all of them, but some as a political signal to Aliyev, writes Kremlin Snuffbox. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan held a phone conversation with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. The leaders discussed the peace process, bilateral relations, and regional security. Erdogan wrote about this on the social network X. During the conversation, Erdogan stated that Ankara is ready to continue facilitating the end of the war.
We are closely monitoring international contacts. Turkey continues its efforts to achieve a lasting peace. We are ready to do everything possible to facilitate high-level negotiations that will pave the way for a just end to the war.
Earlier, the Turkish leader stated that Russia must return illegally occupied Crimea to Ukraine. Turkey's support for Ukraine's territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence is unwavering, Recep Tayyip Erdogan assured. The return of Crimea to Ukraine by Russia is a requirement of international law, the Turkish president emphasized. Ukraine is working with foreign partners on a strategy to return the territories temporarily occupied by Russia. There is a vision for the next 10 to 15 years on how to achieve this. This was stated by the first Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Ivan Havrilyuk, during the International Crimea platform.
Crimea has turned into an enormously powerful Russian military base. We have a direction and a vision for how to return Ukraine's occupied territories. We have a vision for the next 10 to 15 years on how to move forward and where to develop.
He noted that Ukraine needs to gain and maintain an advantage in the Black Sea. And now, even individual raids to destroy watercraft are difficult to carry out because the Russians have taken measures. Let us recall that earlier, US President Donald Trump proposed a territorial exchange to resolve Russia's war against Ukraine. At the same time, he promised that they would try to return to Ukraine some of the territories currently under Russian occupation. In turn, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy emphasized that Ukraine will not agree to a territorial exchange with the Russian Federation, as this is prohibited by the constitution. On the night of August 28th, Ukrainian drones attacked 2 Russian oil refineries, causing even greater losses to the aggressor country in the oil sector. Specifically, UAVs struck the Fipsky oil refinery in Krasnodar Krai and the Kuibyshev oil refinery in Samara Oblast. The attack was confirmed by the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Madyar Brody. He reported that over 2 weeks in August, oil refining in Russia decreased by 21%. Just during this night, fuel production dropped by another 4.7%. It is noted that the Kuibyshev oil refinery, which produces 7 million tons of oil per year, was struck by fighters from the Bird's Sting unit of the Unmanned Systems Forces in cooperation with Special Operations Forces. At the Fipsky oil refinery, which has a capacity of more than 6 million tons of oil per year, the attack was carried out by fighters from the Bird's Sting unit, together with operatives from the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. Strikes on oil facilities are especially painful for Russia. As Bloomberg writes, this significantly affects the decline in Russian oil exports, along with secondary U.S. sanctions against India. According to the agency, Russian oil shipments by sea fell to a minimum last week. From August 18 to 24, the aggressor country exported by sea 320,000 barrels less than the week before. During this period, Russia shipped 19 million barrels of oil by sea, compared to more than 21 million barrels the previous week. Overall, Russia's revenues from maritime oil exports fell by 9% in just the last week. US President Donald Trump convinced Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban to stop blocking negotiations on Ukraine's accession to the European Union. This was reported by Politico, citing diplomatic sources. It is noted that Orban's position changed after a phone conversation with Trump. However, the details of how exactly it changed are not specified. Notably, just a few days ago, Viktor Orban called Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's remarks about the Druzhba oil pipeline blackmail and threats and warned of long-term consequences. At that time, the head of state stated that he had always supported friendship between Ukraine and Hungary, but now the existence of that friendship depends on Hungary's position. Meanwhile, Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó said that Budapest might stop supplying electricity to Ukraine following drone attacks on the Druzhba oil pipeline. In addition, in June of this year, Orban threatened that he would do everything possible to prevent Ukraine from joining the European Union. He has also repeatedly called for the lifting of sanctions against Russia as he believes they cause significant harm to Europe. Levente Magyar, the deputy foreign minister of Hungary, also stated that Hungary allows for the possibility of changing its position regarding Ukraine's accession to the EU, following a meeting with Ukraine's deputy prime minister for European integration Taras Kachka in Budapest. According to the Ukrainian diplomat, they discussed the reasons behind Hungary's position, which is why Budapest refuses to support Ukraine's EU membership. It is noted that the Hungarian government is ready for changes if the Ukrainian side takes real steps. The fall of drone debris on the night of August 28 caused a forest fire in the area of the village of Krynica, according to the operational headquarters of Krasnodar Krai. This village is located just 10 kilometers in a straight line from Vladimir Putin's palace. The area of the fire has grown to more than 3 hectares, according to the Ministry of Emergency Situations. An Emergency Situations Ministry helicopter was dispatched to the scene, but its operation was hampered by the wind, according to the head of Zelenskyy. The forest fire trapped 23 people near the coast. A boat was sent to rescue them. According to the head of Zelenskyy, Alexei Bogodistov, a recreation base was evacuated. Drone attacks had already affected the Russian dictator's vacation last year. As the project reported, Putin has practically stopped flying to Sochi, where he used to spend a significant part of the spring and autumn. A source for the project explained this by Putin's fear for his life after drone attacks on sites in the city. By March 2024, Putin's official residence in Sochi, Bocharov Ruki, was even demolished. Also, on the night of August 28, the Fipsky oil refinery in Krasnodar Krai and the Novokuibyshev oil refinery in Samara Oblast were attacked. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine confirmed the attacks on Russian oil refineries and other facilities. Thus, units of the UAV forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense attacked the Fipsky oil refinery in Krasnodar Krai. In addition, units of the UAV forces and Special Operations Forces carried out strikes on the Kuibyshev oil refinery in Samara Oblast. The plant produces gasoline, diesel fuel, fuel oil, solvents, and more than 30 types of petroleum products. Its processing capacity is 7 million tons of oil per year. The main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense also carried out a successful operation near occupied Crimea. Warfighters struck a Caliber missile carrier in the Sea of Azov, a small missile ship of the Buyan M class.
On August 28th, Russia attacked a Bayraktar drone manufacturing plant under construction near Kyiv. This was reported by several media outlets. According to their information, the facility was seriously damaged. This is already the fourth attack on the site in 6 months. Turkey has reported investment losses amounting to millions of dollars. It is known that the plant has been under construction in the Kyiv region since February 2024. Its exact location has not been disclosed. The plant's annual production capacity is expected to be around 120 drones. The strike on the Turkish facility was confirmed by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. On that day, he held a phone conversation with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
They exchanged views on the current situation and discussed the next diplomatic steps. Ukraine is ready to engage in talks at the leaders' level because this is the only effective format. And unfortunately, it is Russia that is avoiding this and continues the war.
Referring to the overnight attack by the Russian Federation on Ukraine, the president noted that there were strikes not only on the Turkish facility, but also on the Azerbaijani embassy, the EU delegation, the British Council, and residential areas for the elderly. He did not specify which Turkish facility was targeted by the Russian attack. Meanwhile, Zelenskyy stated that he discussed security issues at length with the Turkish leader during a phone conversation.
President Erdogan said that he is involving his defense minister in the process to determine exactly how Turkey can help ensure security, including in the Black Sea.
After the conversation between Zelenskyy and Erdogan, the communications directorate of the president of Turkey stated that Ankara is ready to continue its efforts to bring the war in Ukraine to an end with a lasting peace. In addition, Erdogan stated that a just peace between Ukraine and the Russian Federation is possible. Negotiations must continue, and Turkey is ready to do everything in its power to facilitate peaceful contacts between Kyiv and Moscow at the highest level. Russia has allegedly abandoned its plans to fully control the 4 regions of Ukraine that have been partially occupied since 2022. This was stated by Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. According to him, during the 3rd round of Russian-Ukrainian negotiations in Turkey, concrete positions from each side were presented for the first time. These same issues were then raised at the meeting between US President Donald Trump and the dictator of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, in Alaska on August 15th.
Let me put it this way. Previously, the Russians intended to seize all the administrative borders of the 4 regions. Now they have abandoned these demands, and except for one location, they remain within the line of contact.
According to Fidan, this concerns the transfer to Russia of the remaining 25 to 30% of Donetsk region that has not been captured, as well as holding positions along the line of contact in the Zaporizhzhia region.
The fact that they said this and agreed that it would be guaranteed by a security mechanism actually offers something truly remarkable. There are aspects of this that are difficult for both countries to accept, especially for the Ukrainians.
At the same time, the Turkish minister noted that if Ukraine loses part of the Donetsk region, it could complicate its defense. At the same time, in his opinion, the system of international guarantees can balance the situation and provide space for further dialogue. Earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated that Russia does not want to end the war, is trying to avoid negotiations at the leadership level, and is sending corresponding signals. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump, during a conversation with journalists at the White House, stated that in the next few weeks he will make a decision regarding further actions to resolve Russia's war against Ukraine.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy outlined 3 key blocks of security guarantees. The head of state made the corresponding statement during a briefing on August 29th. According to him, the first point concerns the Ukrainian army. In particular, this refers to funding the current size of the armed forces and providing weapons of Ukrainian, European, and American manufacture. The second part of the security guarantees concerns NATO. Although some partners are not ready for Ukraine to join the bloc, according to Zelenskyy, it is necessary to understand what an alternative alliance could look like.
We need to understand what our partners are willing to do, because that is what constitutes an alliance. I want to discuss this part with our partners next week in Europe.
The third block of security guarantees concerns sanctions against Russia and the use of frozen Russian assets for Ukraine's reconstruction. The Ukrainian leader also stated that next week there will be a European round of negotiations on security guarantees. According to him, meetings will be organized at the leadership level to bring this issue to a conclusion. Meanwhile, Maria Zakharova, spokesperson for the foreign ministry of the aggressor country Russia, stated that Western proposals for security guarantees for Ukraine would allegedly increase the risk of conflict between Moscow and NATO. Reuters cites Maria Zakharova as explicitly saying that the current proposals are supposedly entirely one-sided and are clearly and unequivocally aimed at containing the Russian Federation. It should be noted that it is Russia that is dragging out the negotiation process and continues to attack Ukrainian cities, killing civilians. On August 28th, the aggressor country carried out a massive strike on Kyiv, resulting in the deaths of at least 23 people, including 4 children. A major fire broke out on the Black Sea coast in the Krasnodar region near Putin's palace. On August 28th, the Krasnodar Krai emergency headquarters reported the crash of a drone near the village of Krinitsa. 3 separate fire outbreaks occurred there. According to the agency Novosti, they are located 10 kilometers in a straight line from Cape Idokopas, where the Russian dictator's palace is situated. According to the Ministry of Emergency Situations, the fire covered an area of 32,000 square meters. 23 people were trapped by the fire on the shore. They were evacuated by boat. Amid attacks by Ukrainian drones, Vladimir Putin has almost stopped flying to Sochi, where he used to spend a significant amount of time. According to a 2024 report by the project, citing a source, this is due to the president's concerns for his own safety. Earlier, in Russia's Altai Krai, the aggressor country, a fire broke out on the grounds of the residence of the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. Officially, Putin's residence in Altai is registered as a Gazprom sanatorium. However, according to Russian opposition media, there is also a so-called bunker there, which allegedly can accommodate up to 100,000 people. It is reported that information about the secret construction in the Ongudai district of the Altai Republic emerged in 2010. Up to 3 billion rubles were spent on this project. In 2011, security guards denied Novaya Gazeta correspondents access to the territory, saying that the specially protected facility was intended for the recreation of the country's top officials. US Vice President JD Vance stated that he is ready to lead the country if something happens to American leader Donald Trump. He said this in an interview with USA Today. The journalist asked Vance if he was prepared to take on the role of commander-in-chief, to which he replied that Trump is in good health and has a lot of energy. But it is possible if something happens to Trump.
Yes, terrible tragedies do happen. But I am confident that the President of the United States is in good shape, will serve out the rest of his term, and will accomplish great things for the American people.
At the same time, Vance noted that he is well prepared to fulfill the duties of the presidency. As is known, according to the U.S. Constitution, in the event of the president's death, resignation, or removal from office, his duties automatically pass to the vice president. It should be noted that in July of last year, there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. At that time, he was shot during a speech at a campaign rally. However, the politician escaped without serious consequences. Meanwhile, Trump's approval rating has dropped to a new record low for his second term as the American leader. The relevant data is published by The Hill. According to the poll, only 37% of voters said they approve of the president's actions, while 55% are dissatisfied with his performance. Meanwhile, the president of Portugal, Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, made a sharp statement about Donald Trump. He essentially called him a Soviet or Russian asset. De Sousa believes that Trump, who presents himself as a key mediator in resolving Russia's war against Ukraine, has done nothing to help Kyiv. The Portuguese president in particular recalled the unfulfilled promises of the American leader regarding the imposition of sanctions against Russia. The Armenian consul, Ashken Alexanyan, was detained on charges of espionage in favor of Azerbaijan. According to the newspaper Graparak, citing sources, the detention took place 2 months ago, but the incident was kept secret in order not to provoke an international scandal. It is reported that after the arrest, employees of the National Security Service searched the building of the Armenian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In particular, they checked computers and examined documents. As the publication writes, in order to conceal this incident, information about Ashken Alexanyan was removed from the internet and other open sources, including the official announcement of her appointment. It should be noted that recently relations between Yerevan and Baku have been improving. In July of this year, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev and Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan held their first bilateral meeting without Kremlin mediation. Although the politicians' negotiations were held behind closed doors, a number of media outlets reported positive results, and some sources indicated that Armenia and Azerbaijan might sign a peace agreement as early as December this year. According to the Azerbaijani press, progress in the negotiation process was facilitated by the parties reaching an agreement on the Zangezur corridor, which had long been a stumbling block between the countries. In addition, the efforts of Azerbaijan and Armenia to advance peace are supported by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, as well as the Turkish leader, Recep Tayyip Erdogan.